Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are continuing our preseason coverage for fantasy football for the 2025 season. And here on today's episode, we are going to go through our wide receiver buy list. Now, every fantasy analyst out there has some sort of indication of whether they like or don't like a player, right? Like there's love, hate, there's like, dislike. Well, we're making it money themed. And so this is our wide receiver buy list. These are the wide receivers that I really like heading into the 2025 season. And these are guys that I want to make sure I leave the draft with on my roster. And these are the guys that I want to make sure that I'm even willing to take them ahead of ADP or ahead of where they're currently ranked as well. That's how good I feel about them. Now, if you have missed our other episodes, we're going position by position. So we have the quarterback ranking and tier list, and we have the running back buy and sell list. Next up after this one is going to be the wide receiver sell list, and then the tight end rankings and tier list. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so that way you can be here with us for all those episodes as well. If you missed an episode, just scroll back in the channel feed and go ahead and watch it before you draft your fantasy teams for 2025. Like these are like obviously intended to help you with your season-long fantasy drafts. But if you are playing best ball, a lot of the player takes and a lot of the information will help for best ball as well. And also, college football season started today, so we have plenty of college football content out there. Make sure you're subscribed and you can be here with us for all that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the wide receiver buy list. So running back. On the running back episode, we talked about a lot of different guys where we were really just looking for them to have increased opportunity, right? Because for the running back position, it's so dependent on the situation around you that you can literally give any jabroni running back 25 touches and they're going to fall into 15 plus fantasy points, right? Well, wide receiver is a little bit different. You kind of have to be good at football to be a good wide receiver for fantasy production. Like you have to be able to get open and earn targets within your offense. Now, the reason why a guy might succeed or fail might be how that offense is perceived. Does their offense around them improve? Does their situation improve? Does their share of the pie of the targets within that offense improve, right? So that's kind of going to be what we're going to be getting at here for a lot of these guys today. And the first wide receiver on our buy list is a guy who has actually been on the sell list each of the past 2 seasons. And I am reformed. This is Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. His current ADP is wide receiver 9, 19th overall. I feel like there is a perceived teardrop after the Nico Collins and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr.'s of the world, but I think Drake London is right up there with those guys. I have him ahead of the likes of A.J. Brown and T. Higgins, and it's because of the fact that he was quietly really good last year. And the season ahead this year should be really, really good, right? Last year, Drake London, shockingly, like very, very quietly ranked as wide receiver 5 overall and wide receiver 13 in fantasy points per game, which was his first career finish in the top 40. Like that's a pretty big milestone for him, right? Now, Drake London in that season ranked 3rd in total targets and 6th in target share. So this is a guy that within the Atlanta Falcons offense was able to consistently week in and week out earn targets and just have chances to catch the football, right? And when he got there, he was pretty good. Really high catch rating, very high contested catch rating. Like this guy is a certified, the ball's not 50-50 when it's Drake London. It's more like 80-20 in favor of Drake London. But the problem last year was that he ranked 48th among receivers in target quality rating. What that means is that when he was getting targeted, the passes were often inaccurate. They were often, very short passes. Like they were not very lucrative fantasy passes, right? Well, here in this season, he's getting a quarterback change. Michael Penix Jr., the Falcons drafted him in the first round of the draft last year in the 2024 draft, and he started the final 2 games of the season over Kirk Cousins. They are rolling forward with Michael Penix Jr., as a starting quarterback moving forward. And Drake London, in the 2 games that Michael Penix started, scored 17.6 and 40.7 PPR fantasy points in those 2 games. He was targeted 31 total times in those 2 games. So what you have now in Michael Penix Jr. is a quarterback that is going to aggressively push the ball downfield to Drake London. He's going to have a massive target share. He's going to have a higher ADOT, and he's going to have a lot higher success rate because I do think that Michael Penix Jr. is going to elevate that offense. So Drake London is the first receiver on my buy list for the 2025 season. Now, second up is a guy who was very efficient last year, but his role in his offense is surely going to increase, and that is Jackson Smith-Njigba. He is currently being drafted as the 14th wide receiver off the board, number 32 overall. And when we talk about these ADPs, these are the consensus ADPs on Fantasy Pros, so it's across multiple websites, ESPN, Yahoo, and the rest. It's not just taking it from one place, and obviously it's using PPR scoring, but if you're half PPR, you can kind of adjust for this as well. So Jackson Smith-Njigba, last season, very good season, breakout sophomore season, right? Ranked as wide receiver 9 overall, ranked as wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game. That's pretty solid, right? That's pretty comparable to where he's being drafted. And when you look at how he did it, he didn't do it on a big workload. He ranked 12th in total targets and 30th in target share. And he also had a few ceiling games. He had 4 games of 21 PPR fantasy points or more. So we know that this guy can go out and win you a week, right? Now, why I really like Jackson Smith-Njigba this season is not necessarily because of the quarterback change or the offensive coordinator change. You could make an argument that it's pretty neutral to be going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold, but the competition for targets within the Seahawks offense is going straight down because no longer is DK Metcalf a Seahawk, no longer is Tyler Lockett a Seahawk. Jackson Smith-Njigba is now the alpha wide receiver 1 in this Seattle offense. The only guy that he's really competing for targets with are the ghost of Cooper Kupp and a rookie out of Colorado State in Torrey Horton. So I really think Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be able to continue his solid work and have a bigger piece of the pie for this offense and just continue to be a productive wide receiver and outpace his current ADP of wide receiver 14. So the thing is with Jackson Smith-Njigba also, he's an Ohio State receiver. Like, generally speaking, Ohio State receivers, pretty good bet in the NFL, right? All the way back from Michael Thomas to Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison. Like, there's just a lot of them, right? Well, people forget that when a lot of those guys were there together, Jackson Smith-Njigba was the best one. He was the one that was getting the most targets. He was the one that was the most productive. When he was healthy, he was really, really good. And people kind of forgot about that because he got drafted to Seattle in a situation where he was his team's wide receiver 3 for his first 2 seasons. Y'all, the third-year breakout is also a real thing for wide receivers. So given the situation, given the pedigree of Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think he's a perfect third-year breakout candidate. Now, the next guy on the list is a second-year breakout candidate, although he really had an interesting season in 2024 because he kind of announced his presence in his debut game on national television, and then he really shined in the postseason and in the Super Bowl. Talking about Xavier Worthy of the Kansas City Chiefs. He's the 3rd wide receiver on my love list. His current ADP is wide receiver 23, 54th overall. So Xavier Worthy had a very up and down rookie season, right? Like, if you're going to look at the overall season-long metrics for Xavier Worthy, they're not going to tell the whole story because the way he was being used at the start of the season was not the way he was being used at the end of the season. At the start of the season, he was scoring touchdowns against Baltimore, used as a gadget player on jet sweeps and screens and the like, right? But as the season went on, he not only became the Chiefs' primary deep threat, but he also became the Chiefs' short and intermediate chain-moving guy, a la Rashee Rice, the end of his rookie season. Last year, from week 11 on, Xavier Worthy had 0 games under 5 targets, and he averaged about 8 targets per game. And within the Kansas City Chiefs offense, I'll take 8 targets per game because we know that offense is going to move up and down the field and score touchdowns, score a lot of points. And then in 5 of his last 6 games, including the postseason last year, Xavier Worthy scored 19 PPR fantasy points. So he really, really ended the year strong. We have seen a pattern of Andy Reid wide receivers where they just they're very slow to be onboarded in their rookie year. They finish their rookie year strong, and then they hit the ground running in their second year right where they left off. We saw it with Tyreek Hill in 2016 to 2017. We saw it a little bit with Sky Moore. And then we saw it in a big way with Rashee Rice last year until he got injured and was out for the season. And well, now you look at the Chiefs receiving core, it's Rashee Rice, who's coming off of an ACL and is probably going to be suspended for a third of the season. It's Hollywood Brown, who can't stay healthy. It's Travis Kelce, who is getting really, really old. Xavier Worthy is going to have to be the guy in this offense like he was at the end of last season, and I have a ton of faith that he's going to be able to keep that positive momentum going. So Xavier Worthy, the 3rd wide receiver on my buy list. Now, the 4th wide receiver on my buy list is a perfect example of right place, right time. Although you can make an argument that it's really an example of wrong place, wrong time. It's Calvin Ridley, current ADP wide receiver 29, 64 overall. Last year, he was wide receiver 28 overall. So he's being drafted about for his performance last year, but his performance last year doesn't tell the whole story. Obviously, Calvin Ridley, when he was with the Falcons, had the gambling suspension, was out for an extended period of time, came back, was not super productive, went to Jacksonville, was not super productive. Now he played a full season in Tennessee, and he was wide receiver 28. Cool. That doesn't tell the whole story because the Titans offense was just a dumpster fire last year with Will Levis under center. And he just could not accurately use Calvin Ridley, a guy who was earning targets, a guy who was getting open, a guy who was utilized deep down the field. They just couldn't connect. Calvin Ridley last year ranked number 1 in the NFL in air yards and 4th in air yard share. What that means is if you look at all of Calvin Ridley's targets and you were to look at the spot where the ball either hit or would have hit his hands and added them all up over the course of the season, Calvin Ridley had more of those yards than anybody else. Here's the problem. He also ranked number 1 in unrealized air yards. That is the same thing we just talked about, air yards, except this is the ones where you count up only the ones where he didn't catch the pass because those will be unrealized yards. So there were a ton of off-target balls thrown Calvin Ridley's way at all depths of the field under Will Levis. Calvin Ridley only had a catchable target rate of 59%, which ranked 97th among qualifying receivers. So literally, that's 3 receivers per team. 96, and then the 97th would have been Calvin Ridley. That's how bad the targets were coming his way last season. So I really think that now you have Cam Ward coming to town, number 1 draft pick. You have a Sean McVay, Zach Taylor kind of coaching tree guy in Callahan, the head coach for the Titans. I think this is going to be a much improved offense this year. You already, if you watch the running back episode, spoiler alert, you know my love for Tony Pollard. I think that a rising tide lifts all boats. This better Titans offense is going to significantly improve Calvin Ridley's performance in 2025, and that is why he makes the buy list. Now, the last wide receiver on the buy list. This is kind of the last way that a wide receiver can significantly increase their fantasy output from one season to the next. We talked about this on the running back show. I am very bullish at looking at last season's stats in order as a predictor for this season, right? Because unless situations around a player change, it's very likely that they're going to continue to be a similar player, right? So here's a big way that a situation can change. What if a guy just happened to be on the field more? I'm talking about Jaden Reed of the Green Bay Packers. Current ADP is wide receiver 47, 113th overall. Last season, he ranked as wide receiver 38 and wide receiver 26 in fantasy points per game. I'm sorry, I misread that stat. In 2023 and 2024, he ranked as wide receiver 38 and wide receiver 26 in fantasy points per game. But he did so as a part-time player. He only played 64% of the Packers' offensive snaps, which ranks outside the top 70 among wide receivers. But when he was out there, he was targeted quite heavily. He ranked in the top 60 in total targets and target share, which is much higher than his rate of snaps. And he ranked 15th in yards per route run and number 1 in fantasy points per target. What that means is when Jaden Reed was on the field, he was targeted early and often, and he was targeted in prolific ways. This was even in a Packers season last year that saw a lot of dysfunction and saw some games of Malik Willis at quarterback and not Jordan Love. And when Jaden Reed was on the field, he was used efficiently from a fantasy perspective. He just wasn't on the field a whole lot. Well, fast forward to 2025, Christian Watson is hurt. The Packers, needing to develop a star receiver, are likely to turn to more snaps from Jaden Reed. Yes, I know they drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, but the roles that Golden and Reed are going to play are not all that similar. I expect Reed to play more snaps, and I expect Reed to score more fantasy points in 2024. That is why he is my last wide receiver here on the buy list. Now, before you go, because that's it for the buy list, you want to come back for the sell list. The way you can do that is if you hit the subscribe button on YouTube, you will know when we drop that episode. If this video helped you out in any way in preparing for your fantasy draft, hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Rate and review if you're listening on audio. Helps me out a ton when you guys do that, and I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate it. If you guys want more from me, remember the ranks and the best ball tools are available on the Patreon. Head on over to Patreon patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks if you want access to those. But y'all, that is going to do it for the wide receiver buy list. Like I said, stay tuned for the sell list, but that is going to do it for us here. Hopefully we gave you guys some good information that is going to help you guys kill it in your fantasy drafts here this season. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.